Hello, hello, everyone, and happy Saturday. Today's live is going to be amazing, all about salt, stress, and your thyroid health. I know it sounds a little funky, but we're like, salt? What? Stress? What? Thyroid health? Yes. Hi, autoimmune. Annie, thank you for being here. Yes, it is a very interesting topic. All right. Gotcha, Jess. Okay. Okay, one second. All right, here we go. Okay, hello, beautiful. Thank you for
How are
being
you?
here. Good. How are you? I know. Okay,
Um,
I'm really excited to dive in today. I'm not gonna lie. This is like, I know people kind of trip out on my stories because they see me using a lot of salt and talking about it, but there's really been no like discussion around it really in depth. So I'm like, this is juicy, good. So, why don't you take a second and introduce your beautifulness to all of my amazing followers?
well, my name is Jessica, and I am a holistic nutritionist and nutritional consultant. I also work with HTMA, so me and Sarah work really closely together with HTMA and all that stuff. So, um, yeah, I don't really know. I'm a thyroid coach. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at like introducing myself. I literally teach people how to um recover from thyroid issues. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about salt too. I'm a mineral nerd, so anytime anybody ever wants to listen to me talk about minerals, I am here for it.
Yes, you are so fun to listen to about minerals. Hi, Bailey. I was trying to say H. Kate. Hi, H. Kate. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive into salt, stress, and your thyroid. So, where do we begin in the salt topic? Um,
Well, we should probably start with, you know, not holding back and just completely admitting that everything we've ever been told about salt is pretty much a lie.
let's start there. Okay,
I like
so
going fully 100% in. So we'll
oh my
discuss
gosh, I know.
the, I guess we can just discuss how, where, I guess salt deficiencies and what can cause them and how our complete loyalty to low salt diets has been such a driver of chronic illness in this entire country and how it's been affecting us because it's huge.
Hmm.
Um,
What decade would you say that was when there was like that sweep of like salt is bad, salt is scary, stay away from
I don't think
salt?
it was that
Maybe
long
80s,
ago. Yeah,
80s?
maybe, yeah, something like that. Maybe the 80s, maybe the
Yeah.
90s. Which is really interesting because that's usually around the time that a lot of processed foods came out, and processed
Hmm.
foods have a lot of salt, but I think salt was given because it's a preservative, right? So they've used it for so long. It used to be a currency, and now because it kind of came out at the same time a lot of high shelf stable products came out, um, they kind of blamed the sodium for what the actually terrible processed foods did. And so salt has
Hmm.
always had this bad name, and now we're kind of we're seeing a lot of the results of what we've done with low sodium for a long period of time. And I mean, diabetes is a very big factor in this, which I know that sounds really and like really crazy, but when you understand the salt and stress connection, you'll start to see why diabetes is such a huge thing when you're on a low salt diet.
Hmm.
Yes.
But there's one thing I want to point out about the processed foods, salt connection. The mainstream media is sweeping the world with, the stay away from salt, So the processed food, the sodium that is listed on the back of, like, say, a TV dinner, right?
Hmm.
That technically is like a shitty form of salt that we should
Yeah.
avoid.
Yes. It is table salt. They're not, I mean, processed food companies are not investing in pink Himalayan salt to salt their food with, unfortunately. But even still, it still has sodium in it, so it's still not gonna be as terrible as, sorry about that. That wasn't me, that was the outside world. Um, yeah, so we were saying, yes, it's they're not going to be investing in large amount, but in either way, sodium is still essential. So even if you're eating higher processed foods, which I think our bodies need a lot more sodium than we're giving them credit for, and it's really hard to get that on a whole food diet. So a lot of people that are deficient in sodium are not necessarily, or sorry, if they're eating processed foods, they're not going to be as deficient in sodium as somebody who's eating a whole food diet and not getting enough sodium. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So they're still getting the sodium, but a lot of times they're still getting the water retention because they're getting so much more sodium than they are potassium, which we'll go into as well. But as with all minerals, they need to balance, and sodium and potassium are in that category. They're those balanced minerals. So when you're getting too much of one or the other, it can cause a deficiency of the other. So they have to work together.
Yeah. Okay, so they scared us all away from salt, made us all think that it's going to give us heart attacks, told us to stop using salt. Everything went low sodium. I remember
Hmm.
that. Everything went low sodium. And so now here we are, people like you and I, we do the hair tissue mineral analysis testing, which looks at minerals, and we're seeing pretty much everyone has no salt in their body. And this is a huge problem.
Yes, really low. And I think another contributing factor too about all of this is that like you need salt, you burn through salt really quickly. Um, a lot of people have been avoiding salt. I've talked to people who have not had salt in years. Like I don't put salt in my food, I don't eat salt, I
Wow.
avoid salt like the plague, and they don't understand why they're having so many symptoms. There's been people my age and younger who are having severe issues. I've talked to many people who have young children who are like 10 who have severe salt deficiency and they feel it in their legs. Like their poor kids are like 10 and their legs are cramping like crazy. And I'm like, they need electrolytes. Like you need to give them salt. And it works every single time. I've been talking a lot about salt lately with people, and it's just a little tiny bit. It's crazy how it makes such a huge difference for them. But I think a big reason too is that these people, they had, not only have we destroyed salt by processing it so intensely, but then when they add that to the food, and then you're eating that food, you're eating the bad form of salt, which means it can actually affect your blood pressure technically, but it doesn't happen the same way when you're using a real food salt, like a real salt.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about, um, could you say a couple more symptoms off the top of your head that are signs of a
Mhm.
sodium deficiency?
Yeah, some of the most common ones, especially for us women, I've noticed, especially if you're under a lot of stress, but chronic overwhelm is a huge one. If you feel like you can't handle stress at all, like just the slightest thing can just completely stress you out. Like, and I mean like little things. Like you left your credit card inside, or you lost your keys or something, and you just freak out. Like these things can be so overwhelming for somebody that's very low in salt. Um, Chronic leg cramps or muscle cramps is another huge one. Chronic digestive disorders, really bad, like dry skin. Um, what else is really huge with salt
The
deficiency?
the
Usually
digestive
overwhelm.
disorder,
Digestive, yeah, like
that's
IBS, stuff
massive.
like that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's a pretty common one too.
Mm-hmm.
Just not feeling hydrated, like you just can't drink enough water. It's just
Yep.
you're urinating a lot when you're drinking a lot of water. You're not really absorbing it. You can tell because it's just kind of, you're drinking it and it's going through. There's not a whole lot of lag time in between. which I know everyone's like, well, I drink a lot of water, so I'm going to pee a lot more, but that shouldn't be happening. You should have a few hours at least in between where you're not, urinating all the time. So that's another
I'm
huge
like,
thing.
really? That's just,
Sometimes too, I mean, like when your urine is pretty much white from just being clear. I know everybody thinks that that's just because you're drinking a lot of water and you're not very toxic, but it's literally because you're not absorbing your water. You need to
Mhm.
like your urine shouldn't be completely clear. Like that's not actually good for you anyways because you're draining a lot of your electrolytes. But you should feel quenched when you drink. Another thing that's very common with low stress is like really bad insomnia. Like you can't sleep very well. You're very exhausted. It's another, I mean, it's really hard to say what a true symptom of salt deficiency is fatigue because that's such a common deficiency
Mhm.
across the board for anything. But sodium is one of those things.
That was so
Yeah.
much. You just hit like so many people's main pain points.
hmm So many,
Mhm.
there's so many things. I think the biggest one where you can tell that it's probably a salt deficiency is the overwhelm. It seems to be the biggest. Also really loud noises, which is really weird. People get startled very, very easily. Like if how somebody will just kind of
Mhm.
scare you. For an average person, that's fine. But if you're salt deficient, a small, tiny noise can be like a giant bomb in your house and it can scare you so much because your nervous system is so out of whack. So like tiny cracks, like very sensitive to sound and noise and like just like an overall sensitivity to a lot of things can be a huge symptom of salt deficiency.
That used to be me. I was so sensitive to sound, loud music. I was
Mhm.
just like, couldn't do it. It was just like,
Yeah.
turn it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I resonated with that list, like every one of them. I
Yeah.
remember I actually booked a doctor's appointment one time to ask them why I peed so much
Mhm.
because it was just like, it just felt ridiculous, like every
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just remember the doctor said, "Oh, just put some lemon in your water." So I went home and I started, which is good. I love lemon
Yeah.
water,
That's
but
actually better advice than I thought that they would give you.
yeah, And so I went home because I had that chronic thirst, unquenchable thirst. And if I didn't
Yeah.
have water with me wherever I went because was so thirsty all the time, I actually would have or could go into a panic attack because of my thirst.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you feel like you're just, I know exactly. You feel like it's almost like you can't breathe in a way.
mm-hmm.
Like you're just like, oh my God, I'm gonna shrivel up into a prune.
Yeah. Like your mouth is so dry. You're like, no, I do not smoke weed. I have cotton mouth from something else.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was like a huge mystery that was like revealed to me when you started teaching me about, minerals and stuff. And I was like, holy shit balls. Like,
yeah,
that's huge.
yeah.
So I actually stopped getting up and peeing as much at night.
Nice. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yeah.
thing about sodium, because sodium helps with absorption of the water. I always try and give people this analogy, um, when I'm working with them is you have two minerals, your main minerals, which are sodium, potassium, which a lot of people don't understand that usually if you have a salt, when a doctor tells you that you have too much salt, it's actually because you have a deficiency in potassium. So there's like, in order to balance something, you're not going to want to you want to take the opposite of what that is. So if you're having water retention, you have too much water or whatever it is, you need to counteract that with the opposite of what that is, which is potassium. So like potassium rich foods will help you let go of the water. So you have your two main minerals, which are sodium, potassium. Sodium holds on to water and potassium lets it go. So when you have all this water retention or high blood pressure or symptoms of excessive salt intake, the easiest way to get rid of that is through like potassium rich foods such as like dandelion and bananas, avocado, potatoes. A lot of meat is really high in potassium as well. Not always the easiest to digest for some people, especially if you have low stomach acid because of low sodium. But it can be helpful with moving some of that potassium, or sorry, letting go of some of that water so that you can not feel so bloated and puffy, which is very common as well with thyroid patients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you all for being here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in. I love making our lives interactive. Um, so let's go into the stress piece of salt and the connection between stress, your salt, people's salt, and stress.
Yeah. So sodium is one of the main minerals that's used up significantly during stressful periods. So if you've ever had any kind of physical, emotional, any kind of, life happens, that can drain a lot of your minerals very quickly because you tend, especially if you live in a more like fight or flight response and you're not like regulating your nervous system very well. If you're constantly in this flight fight or flight response, there we go, um, then you're going to burn through a lot of your adrenal hormones basically to replenish you. In order to fix your adrenal hormones, you have to make sure that, like, they live off sodium, um, or they don't live off, but it's one of the biggest nutrients that your body needs is sodium and vitamin C. Your adrenals are really, really need vitamin C and sodium and magnesium especially. Those are the three main ones. So if you're going through stressful periods chronically, you're going to burn through a lot of that sodium. And then a lot of people also work out, they're sweating, they live in like a humid environment, so they're going to be sweating out a lot more sodium, which I know everybody thinks that's like, I mean, you can taste your sweat. It's very salty. So just imagine how much sodium you're losing when you're working out or sweating excessively. It's a lot, like probably close to 2 teaspoons, which is almost 2,000 milligrams depending on the amount that you're sweating, but it's not a small amount. So if you're under stress, you're living in a fight or flight response, and then you're also not replenishing your salt because you're told to stay away from it because it's dangerous, it's toxic, and give you high blood pressure and so on and so forth. It sets you up for this insane, like, it's just not a good place to be because
Shit
you're going
show.
to have a lot of these symptoms, right? And that can lead to burnout. And what happens when you get burned out is it affects your adrenals. You're just completely exhausted. I think many people have experienced complete burnout at some point in their lifetime where they're just if chronic fatigue, like you can't even get out of bed. And it's usually because of the low sodium and also low vitamin C. But then we tend to take a lot of extra vitamin C in ascorbic acid form, which is not the same as a true vitamin C. And it's just like this vicious circle of trying to recover and never really fully getting your energy back. And that's, I think, one of the biggest underlying factors of why many thyroid patients can heal to a point, but they don't actually recover from the fatigue that's been really like this underlying fatigue, if that makes sense. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
feel relatively good, you can kind of function, but there's still this like, you know, exhaustion underneath, and it's usually because you're still not recovered from the sodium, or you might be working out, but you're still not recovering that sodium loss. Or you still might be living in a more stressful kind of flight or flight response that you haven't been able to just kind of regulate yet. So you're burning through it faster.
Wow, that
This can
was.
also lead to, well, you were saying earlier too about your digestion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is a huge one for so many people, especially thyroid patients, but
Mm-hmm.
chronic heartburn is huge for sodium. If you have chronic heartburn, I've talked to so many women who are taking like either antacids or they're on a prescription antacid or so on and so forth. They can't eat hardly any protein at all, like any kind of chicken, turkey, any kind of meat. And I was like this at first as well, where I couldn't even eat beef or anything without blowing up. And I mean like so much gas. I thought I was allergic to it. almost every protein I ate, I was allergic to because I was just not, I had no stomach acid to really break it down. And that was because of the low salt that I had. And it's such a common thing. And a lot of people assume that if you're low in stomach acid, it's because, or sorry, if you have heartburn, you're low in stomach acid, but it's most of the time it's the opposite. You actually you have heartburn because you have too little stomach acid and you need to replenish some of the like key factors, which is usually sodium and zinc to help replenish that so that you can actually get your stomach juices going again. And then you can
Yeah,
digest proteins.
yeah, that's actually a really good point. So you brought up the meat, and I just want to expand on that. For me, the digestion got so severely depleted over the years because like you said before, I was in the chronic fight or flight because of just, life and being in certain stuff says eat
Parts of
oysters. Yes. Um, and so mine started off with like littler, harder foods like nuts,
Yeah,
almonds, or peanut butter, and then it just seemed to escalate into, okay, I was in terrible, terrible, terrible pain for hours from just having 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. And then
yeah.
it went into lentils, then it went to rice, and then it
Hmm.
went to meat, and then it went to chicken. And so I started noticing the underlying thread of like anything that was like a harder type food to break down, I
Yeah.
didn't have the digestion to break it
Hmm.
down. And the hair tissue mineral analysis showed me it was because I was completely tanked in my salt. I had no
Hmm.
sodium, so I had no hydrochloric acid. And
Hmm.
so, like you just said, you restored yours, you've helped me restore mine, and all of that has gone away. All of it.
Hmm.
It's like a
This is
miracle.
this is why I mean a lot of times the celery juice is so helpful for so many people, and I know that's a
Hmm.
huge thing that you teach people too. Is because celery is so high in sodium and potassium, which is really good. It's a good
Hmm.
balance of the two. But I think that was such a huge thing for your recovery because you were so deficient in sodium that it really helped like replenish your adrenals. And then you also have naturally occurring vitamin C and other things, not in large amounts, but it was naturally occurring from the celery and other things that you might like lemon juice and stuff like that. So that's such a good combination and why so many people can recover from adrenal and stress burnout because of that combination. That's why celery juicing, while I personally don't like the taste of it, it's still very beneficial, you know. You kind of get used
Hmm.
to it, like anything, of course, but with the sodium in general is a huge reason I think why it's been so successful for so many people.
Yeah, the sodium cluster salts are absolutely amazing. They are magical and they're so,
Hmm.
so hydrating and they help. And so, what happened as I started to restore my sodium, restore my minerals, and I was able to digest my food again, um, I could tell I was actually absorbing and things were going into my cells because, like you said earlier, the chronic thirst, the chronic dehydration, it started
Hmm.
to go away. And I could
Hmm.
actually feel I could drink celery juice and then have some water and actually feel like my thirst was quenched.
Yeah.
And then like the only thing after that that would actually give me that like dehydrated like cotton mouth in my again was caffeine, a
Hmm.
caffeinated drink because it's so absolutely depleting of
Yeah.
your water and your minerals like instantly,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just that one piece of bringing this the like you said the celery juice in on top of the salt within my water and back on my food and not being scared of it because I too was, scared of the we don't know any better, and we're all trained to
Yeah.
listen to the mainstream media. And for
Yeah.
so long, we were told salt is the devil and you
Yeah.
stay away from it, And so
Yeah.
it's like
Mhm.
there's a big difference between, like you said earlier, the salt and processed food that's completely bleached, stripped, and depleted and will harm us than the natural salt. So I'm kind of torn. Like, which one do you think is better now, the pink Himalayan or the Celtic sea salt?
It depends on the brand. Like some brands are better than others. And it depends also on what you need more of too. Like Celtic sea salt tends to have more magnesium. That's why it's white. Like it's like a whitish gray color. That's the color of the magnesium in the salt. So the magnesium content is a little bit higher, but the pink is the potassium. So if you need more potassium, then I would do the pink. But you also have to keep in mind like where you're sourcing from, like what part of the ocean. Like obviously you're not going to be wanting to source like sea salt from like Fukushima area, obviously.
Yeah,
But
please don't.
and also there are just better places to source. Also, a lot of the pink Himalayan lava, or sorry, pink Himalayan salt mines, not lava, salt, um, they are harvested with dynamite, and so you have to keep in mind because like sodium is a very like absorbent mineral. It can, when you're using dynamite and other toxins, it can absorb those toxins. So when you eat it as well, you can also be absorbing those toxins as well. So I would just be like cautious about where you're getting your sea salt. Make sure it's from a clean area, and then also make sure you're getting a good non dynamite harvested pink salt if you use that. But I think
Yeah.
overall it doesn't really matter, like one or the other. You can flip flop. I have both types myself, so I just kind of go back and forth. Um, but
I actually mixed mine.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, I
That's a
was like,
smart thing to
why
do.
not, right?
Of
Best
course,
of both
Sarah
worlds.
would do that. I'm not surprised at all.
I make
She's
my
gonna
own
have her
rules.
program. Okay, now you mix these two salts together. We're gonna do some chemistry here.
Yeah. Yep,
Um,
we are altering your biochemistry. Yeah, I kind of look at that as like, I've heard a lot of things about like the plastics, being careful, yeah, of the
yes,
plastics
you.
in certain sea
Mhm.
salts. So I look at it as like how I'm super anal with where I get like my Dulce flakes or any of like my
Yeah. Oh
seafood.
yeah, definitely seaweed you have to be careful with too.
Yeah, so I look for things that are off the coast of Maine because that
Hmm.
seems to be one of the cleanest oceans to source things
Hmm.
from. So that's kind of my thing with like fish, salt, and
Yeah,
sea
Maine is
vegetables.
famous for their seafood and stuff, so that's a good idea
Hmm.
actually. Or
Hmm.
Alaska is pretty clean too, from my understanding, but I haven't really looked into that lately, but I heard Alaska and like Iceland and stuff in that general area
Mm.
is usually like the northern Arctic oceans and stuff like that are usually a lot better than, tropical areas, and
Hmm.
that's depending on where you are, but
Hmm. Yeah. So you touched on so much. I'm trying to
I
think
don't
back.
mind. I was thinking of, wanted to talk a little bit more about stress and
Yeah.
how that can, how like being low in sodium and how if you are in this chronic burnout stage, so what can happen when you're in a fight or flight response is we tend to crave sugar a lot, um, especially when we're in this chronic fight or flight. And I have tried for years to quit sugar, years.
Hmm.
And I always thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't have enough willpower, whatever it is. And I had no idea at the time that it was just sodium issues because when you're deficient in sodium, and your adrenals are in this like constant burnout mode, if you're not regulating your immune system correctly, you're gonna crave sugar. And it's not just like a sugar craving where you're like, I could go for some cake right now. It's like debilitating sugar cravings. And I feel like
Hmm.
a lot of, especially women, I feel really terrible that these poor women are in almost kind of like looked down upon, like they have no self-control when they don't understand that this isn't just like it's like you don't have control. It's like an addiction in a way because you need the fast calories to keep your body going in that constant state of stress. So it's not just as simple as being like, oh, just don't eat it. it's like you don't have any control over the amount that you're eating in terms of fast calories just to help get that in, which can obviously do some detrimental things to your body and create this like terrible um overall like how you feel about yourself, and it's just this like vicious cycle where you're under chronic stress, you eat the bad food because you don't have any willpower in terms of like your body just craves it to such an extent. So you eat it, you gain weight, you get this like bad body image, you feel terrible about yourself, and this circle goes on and on and on. And that's what can create weight gain and diabetes and so on and so forth. Because you're not getting to the root cause and recovering from the overall stress, which salt can be very helpful with. Of course, as well as potassium. That's a whole other thing as well, but that can go hand in hand. And it's really important that when you're trying to quit sugar, trying to quit whatever it is, you have to eat salt. It's so important. It is, if you ever, there was Dr. James DiNicolantonio always talked about, if you crave sugar, eat salt. And if you crave salt, eat salt because your body needs more.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid of the sodium. Obviously, like eating the right types, but and we're not talking about eating like a full teaspoon. Like you could have like a little bit of pickle juice. You could have anything that has kind of like a really saltiness to it. It does wonders, and it helps kind of calm down the nervous system a little bit so you're not over consuming those calories.
I started pounding pickle juice this week.
It's so good,
Yeah,
isn't it? I
it
love
is.
it.
I love it.
It's
Yeah.
so interesting. I don't even like pickles, but pickle juice is like the bomb.
Well, the one I get has like garlic and fennel in it, so it's so good, like
Um,
fresh. Yeah.
hmm
Okay, so let's go back to that. I want to speak to that because let's see. There was years where I felt like I had an alien that abducted my brain,
hmm
and after I ate like a large meal, dinner or whatever, it was like I had to literally go straight to the cupboard and get chocolate. And um
Yeah.
if it wasn't in the house,
You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like uncontrollable.
mhm, yeah, it
Yeah.
was like my brain got abducted for that
Yeah.
moment,
hmm
and I
Yep.
had to eat my chocolate in order to satisfy that abduction or
Yeah.
craving, and then it was gone and I was good
Yeah.
and I could just move on. And it's not like I never went into the binge side of it.
Yeah.
It was like for me, I just needed like a couple chews or bites and
Yeah.
I was good, but
Mhm.
I never understood, yeah, why do I have this like I have to have it or I will die if
Mhm.
it's not in my house, like
Yeah.
something. And so back to what you said with, when I started really working on my minerals and the was doing the celery juicing and bringing in the salt and everything, a combination of everything I was doing, it instantly went away. It was like these shackles being lifted off of me. And not only did it go away, but then the actual taste of salt for me or chocolate changed. And it was no
Yeah.
longer
Yeah.
like that juicy desire
Yeah.
taste that
Mhm.
I was like dying for before. It kind of actually got turned off from it and I didn't want it anymore.
Yeah. That's
Is what
so interesting, and I'm actually really happy that you brought that up because it's usually what happens when you don't need those um fast calories. I've noticed that too. I used to be like harshly addicted to sugar because I was like, I need it. It was like a problem. And then when I actually started replenishing myself, sugar was so sweet and so just disgusting. And I was like, I never thought that I would ever
mm-hmm.
get to that point. I knew I was making progress at that point because I was like, if I can have like literally binge on sugar and just have so much of it in one sitting to literally being repulsed by the thought of having candy, it's improvement. So
Yeah,
like
that's
that's
huge.
huge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, it really just goes back to the deficiencies, the main deficiencies of magnesium, sodium, potassium, calcium.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so much of just working on restoring my sodium, restoring my potassium at the same time, because like you said, the balance, um, so much has changed. So much has
Mm-hmm.
changed just from those two small shifts. So I want
Mm-hmm.
to ask you a question. Um, I had okay, are there any quote unquote healing reactions or like reactions, like if someone's super depleted in their salt and say they do what we suggest and they start putting like a pinch in their water and drinking it, can they have symptoms or reactions from that?
Yes. Um, One is they can actually get more water retention, which is already really common with thyroid patients because if you have to remember that sodium and potassium balance. So if you're not already getting enough potassium already, then adding more sodium might not work very well. And you can get high blood pressure from that, even with good salt, if you're not already getting enough potassium. So I think it's really important to try and get everything, like get your diet on track a little bit better first, and then kind of slowly adding salt. But again, if you're having a lot of cravings for sodium, then I think just doing small amounts is fine. Like I'm a huge believer in listening to your body. So if your body's asking for sodium, then I think it's important to give it to it. Um, but also just not going excessive. Like I know in America, everybody's like, more is better. And it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the case. I think I would probably more focus on getting enough vitamin C because that will help nourish the adrenals as well. While you're kind of getting your diet kind of sort of cleaned up in terms of eating more potassium-rich foods and stuff, which is another thing that I just want to say. I think it's really funny that the government's convinced us that potatoes are terrible for us, and potato skin is like one of the highest forms of potassium on the planet. But
Any
we've
particular
been told
potato?
to avoid starch,
Oh
including
gosh,
like,
right.
and if you do have potatoes, most people they skin them, which that just you're throwing away almost all the nutrition in your potatoes. But that's
Yeah,
another thing. Just
I
getting
know.
like not being afraid of food. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I talk to so many people who if I tell them to have more sodium, they look at me like I have 18 heads and I'm like insane. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I was just trying like you know convert them into this salt cult, but also give them resources about how to how or where to read more like valid information. Um, but yes, I think that one of the biggest side effects is probably water retention, possibly if your diet's not completely intact yet. So that can be a symptom. If that's the case, I would just taper back a little bit. But also remember to listen to your body if you are feeling like you're craving salt a lot, and maybe just do things like pickle juice in small amounts, because it absorbs so rapidly and so quickly if it's in liquid form. If you just like take little tiny sips until you feel slightly better, that is totally fine. Um, and also, if you do have too much salt, I'm sure Sarah knows all about this. Just like with celery juice, you'll probably like
Mm-hmm.
have explosive diarrhea, possibly. So
Mm-hmm.
that is another potential side effect. So just making sure it's like anything ever that you ever take is starting very, very slowly and not just being like 2 grams a day, boom, here you go. Like you have to work your way up to the dose that you feel is right. But yeah, just those are the main ones that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can still get high blood pressure, so make sure you're like getting checked with your doctor and so on and so forth so that you're monitoring that, especially if you're prone to high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, even in our holistic nutrition textbooks, they would always say that the literal cure for high blood pressure is to give somebody more potassium. It was to help alleviate some of that sodium. So
Mm-hmm.
just making sure your diet's good, you're getting enough potassium, not stressing too much and then regulating your nervous system can be huge for regulating your salt, not burning
Hmm.
it so quickly.
Yeah. So just to give a like expand on that a little bit more in some detail, there is all kinds of lists that you guys can look up online that just give you potassium sources. Just
Hmm.
Google list of potassium sources and try to find one that has the milligrams, and try to focus on eating the foods that are the higher potassium type foods. Like my favorite, like you said, are the potatoes. Just sweet
Potato
potatoes.
skins specifically,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Even
I
if you
never
just make like
feel.
potato skin chips, so good.
What was it?
Like potato skins, like you know how they cook potato skins? They're so
Hmm.
good. You're gonna, but potato skins, high in potassium, and then you sprinkle it with salt, and it's like this perfect snack because you get both, and
Hmm.
it's amazing. It tastes so good.
Oh my gosh, I made in my air fryer. I made sweet potato fries,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I doused them in my sea salt. It was like heaven. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so things like that. So I just want to make sure everyone was really clear on what she said. You have to have enough potassium if you're going to start bringing in your sodium. So potassium, some of my favorite potassium foods, besides for potatoes, are bananas. I know everyone, bananas have been demonized and everyone's scared of them, but they're so good at like balancing your blood sugar for me in particular, and they're just like so tasty. They're good as a dessert. They're good in your smoothies, whatever. I literally put them in my purse. No joke. I carry bananas around, and they're a
I'm
really
so
good source.
surprised they don't get squishy in your purse.
I have the purses that have it has
Oh, okay. Oh, I
like a
see. They're
stiff
hard.
bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah. Because I'm like, if I'm out and I get hungry, they're gonna keep me full, and so hi, baby. Um, okay, sorry. Anyways, so look up a list of potassium based foods and focus on that, like Jessica said. So you're not just like ODing on salt, and you could put a pinch of salt in your water or just sprinkle it over your food, but don't go like crazy with it. And, because these are actual minerals you're using. Like it's not just a food, like I don't look at salt as, oh, it's just salt. Like I look at it as this is medicine and this is a mineral that's altering my biochemistry, so I'm going to use it as like per the instructions as I would like ibuprofen or something like that, you know?
Mhm.
So, um, the whole adrenal piece with salt is, I know you've already touched on that, but let's just talk to that for a little bit because I still feel like there's still so much confusion on like whether or not adrenals are even like involved in thyroid illness and you know.
That's actually really funny because I was reading the insert of my thyroid medication like last year, just because I've never read it before and I'm curious. And on the thyroid medication insert, they literally talked about adrenals and how they are very much connected to your thyroid. And pretty much the main cause of thyroid issues is because of adrenal issues, which I thought was interesting because whenever you go to a doctor, they don't even acknowledge this, but if you look at the insert of your medication, it literally says on the insert that it's it's usually from adrenal burnout and other things that are related. So it's weird that they're not addressed. I mean, I guess when you go to an endocrinologist, they do address the adrenals at the same time, but they don't believe that you can be in a burnout situation, which is really weird to me. I would imagine that doctors of all people would be the most burnt out. So I'm
Yeah.
surprised that they wouldn't acknowledge that.
Hmm.
But I guess like anything in medicine, if you don't have the test results to prove it, then it doesn't exist, you know? So unless you
Yeah.
have an actual like you could have a slow thyroid and not have thyroid issues, and you can also have slow adrenals and not necessarily be in burnout mode, but you can still feel the symptoms of it. Um,
That's
but yes,
hilarious. I've never noticed that on thyroid medication.
I
And
was
there,
really
I
I
mean,
was surprised. I was like, oh wow.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like this is still a thing where it's like, well, are my adrenals involved with my thyroid? And is this something I need to be addressing? Let's just like clear it up. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
Not only are they involved, they're one of the biggest reasons. And honestly, I feel like the adrenals will burn out way faster than your thyroid will. Like, I mean, your thyroid
yeah.
controls so much of it, but and there's different levels of thyroid issues too. Like sometimes it's your pituitary issues, sometimes it's more like you got like Hashimoto's, sometimes it's more just overall sluggishness, and sometimes it's adrenal related. So I feel like it's not always the case. Not everybody that has thyroid issues has adrenal burnout, but most of the time I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
With the world,
to
like
some
just
degree, I guess it's not always you're in burnout mode, but to some degree, your adrenals will be affected, which will affect your thyroid.
I mean, with the lifestyle we all live, the like
Mm.
pounding caffeine, working too
Oh yeah.
much, you got your kids in 10,000 sports, so you're never able to rest, like you're not sleeping enough at night, or if you are go to bed, you don't sleep well, like we're
Mhm.
all EMF saturated. Just,
Yes.
yeah, just the whole shit show of it. I feel like the adrenals, everyone's adrenals are just probably under some sort of attack, from some front, and they need
Hmm.
love. They need that love from the basic minerals like salt to be able to support them.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like a lot of what's going on in this world today wouldn't happen if everybody had enough salt because everybody's so triggered so easily. I'm like, you need salt, dude.
You see two guys having road rage and you just walk over with some salt.
For real. Is that crazy?
Mellow out, drink some salt water. Yeah, seriously,
Yeah.
everyone is super hyper triggered nowadays. And
Mm. I think
you're
it's just
deficient.
the it's just the chronic burnout from, like you were saying, the lifestyle of living in a developed nation where we're expected to just, this is how we live. And it's this, and then we wonder why we're so sick and so ill. And once we're under a lot of stress and our adrenals are burnt out, it's going to be really hard to detox because our body's just trying to like function. So thriving is a very different story. They're just trying to function with whatever minerals they have left, which I have to say the body is like a very miraculous thing, but it's going to slow down things that are not necessary just to make sure that you stay alive, obviously. I'm not saying that, I mean, eventually, yes, stress will kill you. We know that. So it is important. Like, this isn't just kind of like, you know, don't don't ignore it because it can be a fatal issue and your body will slow down things that it doesn't need just to keep you functioning, but it can't do that forever. So the
Mm-hmm.
best way to come out of that is to nourish yourself deeply and also like trying to control that like well, not necessarily your emotional response, but also um the overall like what you're eating and how you're living your life because that all plays a huge role in your sodium retention too. It's not always just a matter of like replenishing the sodium that you've lost. It's a matter of retaining the sodium that you have because you can eat all the salt. You can have 10 grams a day if you want to. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can. If you're losing it all the time and you don't change your lifestyle, you're going to keep moving through all the sodium. So you have to remember that the lifestyle factor of this is a huge component in also preventing the sodium loss to begin with. Um, because then you won't necessarily need as much salt either, right? If you're not burning through it in excessive amounts because of the way that you're living your life, you're going to be able to like keep it like you'll be able to relax a little bit more, enjoy your life a little bit more, and not be on this constant flight or flight response that is overwhelming for so many people.
Yeah. So what are some suggestions that you think we could give people with their
Honestly,
lifestyle?
do you want my honest suggestion, or do you want me to like
I love
PG
the
it?
honest suggestions.
So my honest suggestion would be to like get off social media and stop pretending like everybody, like just stop being involved too much in social media as a whole, just because it is such a stressful place a lot of times. It's designed to be triggering, to trigger this like response of your nervous system to create a reaction so that you comment and so on, and it keeps this algorithm going, right? So I'm not saying don't ever use social media. Obviously, we're on it right now. It can be used as a good tool, but just keep in mind that this is how it is designed, and it can be affecting your overall feeling about yourself, which can create a stressful response in the body as a whole, not including you're staring into a screen that is like illuminating radiation all the time. So that's another issue that can cause stress. Like you were saying, like excessive caffeine use, working excessively and not having any fun or play, like doing things that just genuinely bring you joy and happiness is really, really important. I would say breathing is really, really good too. Like learning how to breathe and meditate and stuff can be a huge, and that's not everybody likes doing that, but it can be a huge contributing factor to your overall like mental space and creating a more of a zen kind of environment that you feel comfortable in. It doesn't mean you have to turn into this like crystal hoarder person who just meditates all day in the bush somewhere, but also like just doing things that that just make you feel good, doing some self-care, spending a lot of time in nature. Nature is great for any and all of us. We're meant to be there. So anything that you can do that, you know, brings kind of out a lot of this radiation, that brings you joy and happiness. Those are all huge things. Not overworking, not overexerting yourself, having healthy boundaries, letting go of drama, like getting rid of toxic people in your life. Like these are all huge lifestyle factors that are a really important component of your overall stress. But I think the biggest ones that a lot of us have forgotten is play. And I think we assume that play is something that kids do, and it's not something that adults need as well. Like it's huge. And I don't mean play like let's go all play with Legos, although that is great, but just like just do things that you really enjoy. And if your idea of play is painting or, drawing a picture or doing something that can get you into a flow state where you just lose track of time and you don't even know what you're doing. And it can be that alone is very meditative, whether you are sitting down meditating or if you're just coloring or whatever it is that you're doing. That is huge for your nervous system to help like move through emotions and tough things that can prevent you from losing so much sodium and get you out of that fight or flight response.
Yes, absolutely. The nature piece for me is the instant trigger. I When I go into any sort of beautiful nature, it's like, and now that I have really worked on replenishing my sodium, so I can actually feel my nervous system down regulate. It's almost as if I was in like a stick shift and I like shifted gears, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I feel that kick
Yeah.
over and it's so relaxing. And I can really I can get that from play, like you said, hanging out with my friends, having fun. But nature, it's like a next level for your
Yeah.
nervous system, which is exactly like you've been saying this whole time, what you need to do to be able to get out of the fight or flight and to be able to help your adrenals just chill.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so
Yeah,
whatever.
also gratitude is huge too. I know like when people talk about gratitude, they're just like, yeah, I'm thankful for my mom and dad and blah, blah, but it's so different when you feel thankful. And I think being in nature is one of those things that can help you do that because you're surrounded by stillness, but then also you just feel like when you feel gratitude, it's very different than just saying you're thankful for something. Like, like it's very,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. It's very, how like you were saying, you can just really feel yourself getting emotional, like a lot of emotions can come up. But it's like when you look at somebody like your daughter or your son and you just like, or your husband or whoever it might be that's really close to you, and you genuinely just feel so like thankful that this person is in your life. It's a different feeling than just being like, yeah, I have a daughter, I'm thankful, sure, like it's that
Hmm.
whole feeling thing is a huge component um of gratitude. Otherwise, you're not really truly like practicing it, if that makes sense. It's all about that
Yeah.
emotion and like bringing up that emotion and not being afraid of those emotions and being, my friends and I always say like, we just make it really awkward. We'll just like send each other cute messages and be like, I love you. You're fucking amazing. And they just like, it's like super cheesy, but it's the cutest thing. And it just makes us both, it's just really awesome. Like that feeling is what you want to do when you're practicing gratitude, but that can be helpful as well.
That is awesome. You did that to me the other day, and I was like almost in tears over your just
Right?
one cute little sentence. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah.
Um,
So I'm glad
If
you
it makes
actually
you feel
brought that
better, I
up.
always cry when I send those messages. So if you cry when you get them, then we're on the same
Oh,
page. That's what gratitude is.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I love sending them too. You're right. It does feel, whether you're receiving or giving, it feels good both
Mhm.
ways. Yeah. Yeah, and so I love that like we can break this down, okay? Because like I want to break this down almost like spiritually into scientifically for a minute because I feel like now at this point social media is probably saturated with the like be grateful and go meditate
Yeah.
and go in nature, and it's like
Mhm.
if you don't truly understand the anatomical and chemical reactions behind what these things are doing, then I feel like those are the people that could roll their eyes and think it's stupid and not actually want to put them into place.
Mhm.
But like if you just summarize everything you basically just said, it's like if we're sitting in a beautiful park or we're at the beach enjoying the gorgeous view of the ocean. Okay, so say we're just doing that, and then we add in like, some words of gratitude that we speak out loud, like I'm so so grateful for this beautiful planet and that I'm alive on this gorgeous earth to enjoy this moment right here right now. And you feel that peace and that calm within your heart, within your nervous system, and your body's at peace and you're just chill. Okay, so what happens in that moment, like anatomically or like scientifically, and feel free to expand on this, it's like you're slowing down your body. Like I like it, it's like an engine, the gears. They're
Yep.
the gears, the engine that's just running. So it's like you're taking your foot off the gas from doing 150 miles per hour and you're letting it up and you're dropping down, you're shifting gears, you're dropping down into like cruise control.
Yeah.
And so you're not burning through your minerals and when you're in that state. And so
Yes.
you're right. I'll let you take
Yeah.
over.
That's exactly true. And I think that that's the difference too, is that you can go in nature and not be present in nature, like the idea is to try and notice what's in your surroundings and be in that moment as opposed to
Mm.
just being in your head and all over the place and not focused. But when you're actually in nature and you're in nature and you're noticing what's like, you're using your senses and you're there, you're like in that flow state, like I was saying earlier, where nothing else is around you. Like you can go for a hike and not really be there, like you can go hang out with a friend and not really be there.
You're
I
texting,
think,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, we've all experienced that, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even so much as like going out in nature, but just being present in that moment. It's just so easy to do it in nature because you're surrounded by stillness and it makes it easy to like it's almost like being a child again, where you're just so intrigued by what's going on around you, and that's what brings you back into this like regulated state. You know, you come back to yourself, and that's what can really help you kind of get through the and ideally like practicing this so much that it becomes your norm, so that even when bad things happen or things happen, of course you're going to go into like a fight or flight response, but just being able to bring yourself back into a more flow state is what you're really intending on doing, and being able to do it more regularly so that you're not just like up and down all the time.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. All right, well, why don't we wrap it up there? Thank you so much. This is, I, there's so many nuggets in this. I hope everyone really ingests everything that you said, because it's like this is this is like the magic part of the magic to like recovering health, sustaining health, prolonging health is,
Hmm.
it truly does come down to these simple things,
Hmm.
you know? And
Minerals.
so, yeah, why don't you let's tell everyone where they can connect with us.
Well, right now, I guess JMS Wellness is my website that's up now. So, that's the best place to reach me. Still working on my program, but that'll be huge. Really, really, really excited about that one. As soon as it's done, it's going to be epic. I'm really excited for it. So, and it's all about
Yeah.
how to take care and regulate yourself. So, and also like your nutrition, like the whole lifestyle that's involved with overall healing, not just, taking random supplements and being afraid of food. And I was going to say is something that you touched on earlier when you said that you had a really hard time with like eating foods, and everything just kind of you started to just react to everything that you were eating. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people turn to fad dieting, because they start to react to a lot of stuff because they're deficient in all these nutrients, and they can't break down the food that they're eating, so that they react to them, and then they cut them out of their diet, but they don't realize that cutting them out of their diet is cutting out a lot of nutrients their body needs to recover from the issues that they're having. So it's it's like this vicious cycle of like fad dieting, avoiding food, being afraid of food, and like, I know there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and that's one thing I love so much about minerals and nutrients is that it doesn't matter what diet you follow, it's the very foundation of what you're made of, which is basically salt
Mhm.
and calcium and magnesium and literally stardust, all these minerals that exist all over our planet and our solar system and everything. You are part of that planet. So if your mineral balance is not, if it's off, you're going to feel it. And it doesn't matter what fad diet you follow. It's all about
Mhm.
the minerals and your foundational nutrients. So
I'm so
that's
glad
one
you
thing
said that.
I love them. Like they've been a game changer for so many people. And salt
Yeah.
is especially one of those ones that it's almost like iodine, like you understand me with iodine. And ironically, iodine helps to metabolize potassium, which is very closely linked to sodium. So it's very ironic that we're told to fear sodium and fear iodine and fear all of these things that are naturally occurring that we're literally a part of. Like we need them.
Mhm.
We need them to survive. So whenever
Yeah.
people tell me to be afraid of food, I just laugh at them.
Mhm.
Listen.
Yeah. I know I was about to wrap it up, but you just started a whole nother ball of wax. Yeah,
I know we
I
can't
have
open a can of worms. We don't
I
have
have
time.
I have to touch on that though, because I have such a pet peeve now from what I've been through and what I know, that like I
Mhm.
have to say this. So at one point in my life, I was obsessed with doing food allergy tests. I remember I paid like $200. I did 184 allergy food tests. Um, and I got like 3 sheets back, cried my eyes out on all those results because it was like basically every food I was eating, I was
Yeah,
like either high or
same.
medium.
Literally same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went to my doctors and I was like, I need you to pull my, I want to do blood allergies with you. And like, it was interesting that it was like a whole different list of foods I was
Yeah.
reacting to. And then I was also listening to a certain dumbass celebrity doctor that said cut out certain foods from your diet too. And I was already gluten free and I was already dairy free.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was like
But you weren't
between,
getting better.
no, I
But
was
you weren't
getting
getting better.
sicker and sicker and
Exactly.
sicker
Exactly.
no matter what. And then I got to
Mhm.
this window this big where I was like, I have nothing to eat except for these little bit of fruits, salads, and these little bit of vegetables, and I can't even eat meat anymore because it hurts, right?
Yeah.
So it was a scary, scary moment when you feel like your food window has gotten that small. And I've talked to women like this already,
Yeah.
and I know this is a big thing. And so,
It's so unsustainable. They feel like they're in a
yeah,
prison, like they're being
yes,
punished. Yeah.
yes, I would
Hmm.
cry. I would stand in the kitchen and cry when I
Yeah.
tried to figure out what to eat. And a true story, all the time, I would stand
Yeah.
and bawl my eyes out trying to figure out what I could eat. And
Yeah.
it was just the natural rebel in me when I just said, F you all,
Okay.
I'm not doing any of this.
Yeah.
And that was actually when I started celery juicing. And I didn't understand the benefits of celery juice. And I just literally was like, well, this is a trend. I should try it. And it started helping me. And then we shortly met after that and started studying minerals, did my heritage mineral analysis. And then the rest is history. I'm completely restored. I can eat. I can
Yeah.
eat. And so, yeah, I mean, it has been proven. I have proven it to myself. The food allergy test can be inaccurate. And,
It's not even
there,
so much that they're not accurate. Like they're accurate, but what do they do? They just tell you to avoid those
yeah,
foods, and that's not realistic, you know? Like
yeah,
especially when you're allergic to everything you're eating. Like there has to be a foundational, like there's a reason for that. So what's the reason for this? Like it's not because like our bodies are reacting to these foods for a reason. It's not just,
yeah. And it,
random.
and everyone said, "Oh, enzymes, 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 enzymes." And so I
Yeah.
was taking a
And then,
capsule by Pure
yeah.
Encapsulations that had 50 enzymes in it 3 times a day
That were like
with each meal.
$70 or something.
Yes, literally
Ironically,
like
you know what's really
65.
funny? Do you know what's hilarious about enzymes?
Hmm.
Do you want to know, or should I not
Yeah,
tell you? Enzymes
what?
can't be activated without stomach acid. So you're spending
Of course.
$70 on these enzymes that if you're low in HCl, they're not going to do that much anyways. Like they might help a little bit for maybe a short period of time until you become even more depleted. But if you are low on stomach acid, it doesn't matter. And it's weird. And I'm actually glad that you brought that up because a lot of people come in and they're like, just have enzymes and okay, that's great, but that's not the root cause.
Yeah.
Like the root cause is not okay. If the root cause is you don't have enough enzymes, what's the root? What creates the enzymes? What's
Yeah.
what's the problem with the enzymes that you can't create it on your own all of a sudden? You know,
Hmm.
and that is always goes back to minerals because you need a mineral in every single enzyme reaction that you ever create ever in your whole body in your whole life for the rest of your
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
So if you're deficient in minerals, you're not going to have the enzymes. And then if you're deficient in minerals, you're not going to be able to activate said enzymes. And
Hmm.
therefore, it always just goes right back to minerals every single
Hmm.
time.
Loop back to minerals, back
Just
to
every
minerals.
single time.
Yep.
And
Every
especially the
time.
ones that we tend to be the most deficient in, which is usually magnesium, sodium, and zinc. Those are the three main minerals that are used to make a lot of enzymes. I don't know if it's most, but magnesium alone is like 500 different enzyme reactions. And then sodium,
Wow.
I think, is just about as much. And then zinc is usually created with magnesium in some form. It's used in some way to create more enzymes as well. So, and also stomach acid. So it's so crazy how it always just goes right back, right back.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. So it was like a twofold. It was a twofold when I started celery juicing because I was replenishing my minerals, but I was also detoxing my liver, rebuilding my bile, and just cleaning up my whole system. And then bringing in the actual targeted after doing the testing and finding out, you put together my protocol and was like, hey, you need to bring in these supplements and
Mhm.
actually targeting the minerals that I was low in. Lo and behold, my cravings, my alien abduction cravings went away. I could actually digest my food. I started being able to, which the digestion, being able to digest my food was so huge because my quality of life had become so poor from the bloating and the gas and the constipation because I couldn't digest my food, that it was like this vicious cycle where by the end of every evening I was literally stuck going like I was on the toilet, like on and off the toilet because I was in so much pain, but I wasn't going in the bathroom, but I felt like, it was this terrible vicious cycle I was in that just
Mhm.
gone.
Yeah,
Minerals. Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you. I'm so
Yeah,
happy
no.
that I'm so happy that you were so open to getting it done because like I was still kind of like learning around the time that I did your first one, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just like, yeah, I want to do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. And it's been so like you've just had so many amazing results with it, and now you do it
Mm-hmm.
too, and it's just like it's just been so cool to watch your progression, but also like your progression on paper as well, like seeing your
Mm-hmm.
minerals change, see how they stay the same when you're not following your protocol. It's so
Yeah.
crazy. I'm like, there was there was one time where you weren't following, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do this for a couple months, I guess. I don't know, you kind of got busy, I guess, and you stopped doing it, and then your next test that you did was like almost the exact same as your old other one. And then you started doing it again and it changed. Your
Mm-hmm.
biochemistry changed again. And like, I honestly just get blown away by how accurate these test results are. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I keep getting so surprised, even though I know they're super awesome. I'm like, this is amazing. Like it's
Yeah.
so crazy. And it just gives you so much insight, especially about your stage of stress. Like
Mm.
it's mind blowing. And I get so excited every time somebody watches you in HTMA. I'm like, let us go. Let us go. It's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know it was that period actually, going back to you talking about stress is like I stopped I was so stressed out was when I was moving. It was when I was moving and I was just so distracted and I was packing and I was shipping things and there was just so much going on that I stopped my protocol. I stopped the salt, I stopped everything and then on top of just the stress, it was like insane. I like the whole you burn through your minerals super fast concept, like what you were teaching earlier. I witnessed it. I couldn't believe how much all of my minerals just tanked in like 3 months because my stress was so high and I wasn't replenishing and I wasn't being mindful and countering the stress with nature and being present and all the practices. And it really like showed me how this is a huge thing and it's something I plan to do the rest of my life because it's crucial just to have a life. If
Yeah.
you want to have a good quality of life, you have to pay attention to your mineral status.
hmm Especially
Mm-hmm.
sodium. It's so important. Like I said, it used to be a currency for a reason. They used to call them
Yeah.
the great like salt water that was especially high in magnesium, but also sodium stuff would be like the healing waters because it did just worked miracles on people. But yeah,
Well,
it's got a really bad rap, but I'm telling you guys, it's life changing.
it really is. Yeah.
Hmm
All right, cool. Well, I feel like we could
We
always
could
just
talk about
keep
this for
going.
way too long.
We could
I
just
can keep
keep
going,
going.
but yeah, we should probably stop.
For the sake of our hour and 20 minutes in, we'll wrap it up right there.
Okay. Well, thank you for
So,
having me on. But yes,
yeah,
the best way to get a hold of me is jmswellness.com. All of the information, well, all of my contact info is there, and or Instagram, JMS Wellness, or just work with Sarah, and we'll work. We'll somehow work it out. Sarah does the
exactly.
same thing I do, so we're all on the same page here.
Yes, it's amazing. You turned me on to a whole new world of wellness with the minerals. I love it. I'm super addicted to. So yeah, if anyone wants to contact me, my website is coachsarahjoy.com. You can sign up for my free email, and when you do, you get 5 freebies. The one PDF is called the what I wish I would have been told after I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, and then there's a 5-day video series that you get as well called For Greater Peace and Higher Energy. So go take advantage of that. And if anyone is interested in doing their hair tissue mineral analysis or learning more about their mineral status, go ahead and hit either of us up. We can both help you out with that root cause testing and protocol implementation. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I will talk to you soon, my love. Have a great rest of your
Yeah.
Saturday.
Thank you for talking.
Yeah.
Anytime.
All right. Bye.
Bye.